most recently, similar to how you've taken everything virtual, I'm on the board of Stanford Innovation Week, and you may have seen some of the programs for the last 2 Septembers. Well, we're now facing this virtual event with over 3,000 people that come in a 10-day period, now having to go all virtual. And so we have a program called Launch, Thursdays at noon. It's innovation at lunch, and I'd love to have you join me. If you go to siweek.org or Google Stanford Innovation Week, you'll find it on the page. I gave you some of the background, and I guess the other thing I wanted to say is that what I'm going to show you is built around a program I've developed for larger companies, but the ideas in the book and the ideas I'm going to show you are scalable. So I'm going to try and explain my experience as a small business owner around the concepts that are in the book, which are for bigger businesses, and hopefully demonstrate the scalability, but also make it relevant, to you. I understand most people here are interested in having their own business grow. So I'm going to try and have that perspective. I have some resources to share along the way. In 2015, I built a site called Chief Packaging Officer that was essentially a trade magazine for the packaging industry. And it was done on the behalf of Kodak as a standalone program. The division of Kodak that we worked for was called Design to Launch, and they specialized in workflow software to get new packaging to market more quickly and with less mistakes. And for a company like Johnson & Johnson who used it, a major problem if you have a labeling issue on some of your goods. So it's a big, complicated problem. There's 1 million people in the packaging industry. They're passionate, and they also, the research showed, feel underappreciated. So we came up with the idea of Chief Packaging Officer, and we made a formula to produce content on a regular basis. Over the course of a little more than a year, we grew their email database from about, I think it was 8,000 to 17,000 people in the database. We cataloged 800 people who raised their hands as a lead, and 57 of those were sales qualified leads. The product was $1 million to buy, and so a pipeline with 57 leads at $1 million a piece makes that company pretty attractive. And lo and behold, at the end of the first year of it being operational, Kodak sold a division. And one of the negotiating points in the transaction, this M&A deal, was that the acquiring company wanted Chief Packaging Officer. And while I lost the job, I was fascinated that there was enterprise value in a brand owning a magazine or a media property. And it made me think about Sumner Redstone selling a property to Disney or something like that. You could just imagine that there's enterprise value locked up inside of what you produce as a company. But there's never been an economic way to measure that. And I'll get to that, but the important thing was that this really sort of got me thinking about what I'm going to show you today. And then about 1.5 years ago, I launched this for a software company that was providing software for accounts payable professionals. And you can kind of see the trend here. You really want to have your media aimed at a niche. You have to really understand who your niche is. And the things on the left are all the things you probably do or may have heard about or maybe not have heard about. And I'll tell you, they are things that you do when you're running marketing and trying to run a website and SEO and social media. And the cool thing about putting it under a brand like Untapped or Chief Packaging Officer is that it all comes to purpose to showcase your thought leadership, your talent, and do it in a way that people are used to consuming media. So I've really worked hard to stamp out the word blog. You'll see on my website that I call mine the hub, because that's what we're really doing, is building, and you'll see it in the title there, a content hub of things that are authoritative, trusted, multimedia, and importantly, indexable by Google. And when you do this and it all clicks together and you're building your email list, you're actually building your customer audience. And so I started public speaking about these two experiences, and I wrote a book and started a company. And I actually started it at Stanford Innovation Week. I said, if I don't write this book, I'm never going to be doing it, never going to do it. And I tried to package how to build one of these for yourself, whether your program is just a little ebook and your email and you're a solopreneur, or you're a major company trying to enter a market niche. The ideas here could be baked into a modus operandi or the publisher's MO. And what does a publisher do? They build an audience and then they monetize it by selling advertising and sponsorship. And here we're monetizing it by getting leads to our business. And that really is the essence here. We'll get into the ROI aspect of this and why it's important to have that measure of success and really tie what you do to it. And so the essence of the book is to help you set your goals, take the mystery out of your ROI for everybody on the team, and then define a strategy and implement with your team. And so the book has ideas on how to build your strategy, which we'll cover today, and then also ideas on how to get your team working together, because publishing content is a year-round effort. You're putting stuff out there 24/7 available for your customers, but you want to do it in a way that you can do it within budget and you can schedule people to do the work, and you can
Keith, I'm sorry, Keith, are you going to share your screen?
Am I not sharing my screen?
No, sorry.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Okay, real fast. The launch show, Innovation at Lunch, Chief Packaging Officer, first case study, Untapped, second study. These are all the things that you have to do when you're doing social media and content marketing and running a website. So you might as well concentrate it under a brand. And I wrote a book. So that catches us up on our slides. The book today, if you go to Amazon.com and search on Google, The New Content Culture, Keith Reynolds, the book is free for everyone on the call today. And I hope you enjoy it. It's 100 pages. Somebody said it's a good Saturday morning read. And it's my journey of the things that I've just been talking about and how I've discovered to create this idea of a content hub that is really important information for your customers, and they're out there searching for it. So I hope you go and get the Kindle edition, and I'd love your feedback if you take the time to read it. And I hope it helps you on your journey. So yeah, getting your team together is as much important as it is to get your strategy right. And so today I always try and start with why, like Simon Sinek, and cover the who, what, and how to share some ideas with you that you can apply in your daily business. And over the last 15 years, content isn't just content. It's the way you deliver an experience to people. So all the things that HAYVN's doing while we're locked down in our homes, you're creating an experience. And I've been seeing the emails, and so it really helps to build this into the culture of your company and figure out how to do this, even if it's 2 or 3 people, but do it in a way that understand that you have an audience and you're giving them an experience. And marketers often have a difficult time explaining to management, the people who write the checks, why we're doing this stuff. And I want to just take a quick step, something that I've used for many years, just to highlight the importance of this experience building and the impact it has on a business. If you think of marketing like a rocket, rockets have a payload and a delivery vehicle. And for a company, your technology, your products, your services, those are the payload. And your overall presentation is the delivery vehicle. Everything from your materials for your business plan, marketing plan, the content you produce, the SEO you do, your sales process, how much you've spent time to optimize that and understand where customers are at any given time, and to organize and classify them so that you're presenting the right information and answering questions proactively where they are. Your website, your social media, your advertising, PR, collateral, all of that stuff are the things that deliver your payload. And the interesting thing is that with fierce competition, your offerings are largely differentiated by the delivery vehicle, not the payload. In fact, there's so much competition today that there's very little product differentiation. It's all about the experience that gets delivered around that product. And so you have great payload, but from the early adopter stage on, your orders are less affected by the offering than they are by the overall presentation and what you surround those products with. And the result is lower visibility, perception of low quality, low memorability, sales leads trickle in, your pipeline isn't being filled, and oftentimes you can see companies right away how much they value the presentation based on their digital presence. Was it thought through at all, or is it just, you know, ancient and not up to date and so forth? So it really does make an impact on the ability of the business to succeed. And if you're a startup and you're trying to raise capital and gain market share, it really can impact you in very, very important ways. And to the point of having to compete on price, because your competition can point to the things that they see about you and say, well, how well run is that business? So when you're talking to the C-level and the board level of a company, these are the kinds of things that you really need to emphasize. And as we're going to get into it, that we now, because of marketing automation, we also have a financial approach to make this case as well. And then there's Google. And the interesting thing about Google, I want you to remember, is that if you're writing so that Google can understand you and index you for co-working in Fairfield County, Connecticut, for example, with HAYVN, then you're writing for the human audience too. They've spent millions and tens of millions of dollars getting MIT engineers to write algorithms to understand what it is you're publishing. And they will be kind to you, and there's very explicit ways that you can create content that's interesting to people and interesting to Google. And you really have one mission, is to make it interesting and valuable to both. And who are you making it interesting to, right? Well, I realized as I was putting this together how outdated this slide became in the last 2 months, right? It's up to date in that you're talking to an audience that's very largely communicating by phone, or at least digitally on a laptop or a larger device like an iPad. But they're not hanging out this close anymore. They're probably more like that. And your goal is to really get to know those people intimately and understand their goals and their wants and their desires and their need for entertainment or information, research, and then organize from your own culture within your company, no matter how big it is presenting it in a way that's going to connect with them. And so that what that means you need to do, and I guess probably one of the things that I bring to the table is I ask why all the time, and I focus, because I want to get to that person that's going to connect with what I've produced and ask me to testify to Congress so my products can get looked at a national laboratory. Or I want to connect with a packaging team and have information for all of them, whether they're in production or design or legal. The idea of having really focused content is important, because if you think about it, about half the world is on the internet. So that's about 4 billion people. And I think last year we went over 4 billion people, but you only need what, 50 to make your numbers, if you will. 50 to be a wild success. If you close, if you close 1%, so that's 50 would be a half a sale. So if you get 100 people, right? And everyone has their different economics on what the pipeline is. But the point is, don't write for the 4 billion. Don't get excited about the 4 billion. Really understand, pick co-working again. How many entrepreneurs, companies, or how many startups are there in Fairfield County? And how can you build a list of them and attract them? And how can you have content and programming that's valuable to them? So if you had 3,000 in your target database in Fairfield County and you could get 40 or 50 of them, you'd be a wild success, right? And so the key is not to get seduced by the number of people on the internet. It's the exact demographic and profile that you want to attract. And if you write to them and you stay on message, my experience is guaranteed you'll build that audience and you'll be a success. And publishing has been a wealth creation tool since Benjamin Franklin produced his early publications and figured out that he could sell advertising. Before that, publishing and book publishing in particular, back in the 1700s and prior, had been on a barter basis, and it was done between people who owned printing presses. So that's how built in it is. And if you think of the Farmer's Almanac from Ben Franklin, that was the experience. It was providing the information to help people get their plants in the field. So what? Well, what is this content publishing? And what is the publisher's MO? Why do I need one? We need one, first of all, because if you think of what a publisher does, they have this North Star idea. The Wall Street Journal or Forbes magazine, they mean something to the audience. Chief packaging officer, right? Connected to the fact that packaging people didn't feel they had a seat at the table when it came to having an impact within the business. And yet it really was not fair to them, because they are the last moment of truth in a consumer's hand. They make that product sell. And if they make a mistake in the packaging and mislabel it, they have to do a recall that can cost hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's a really important function. And so the chief packaging officer was an aspirational idea for them. And everything we wrote within that big idea was was connected to that idea. So the idea of the publisher's MO is to have a way to methodically come up with your publication, your blog. So take blog off of your website and give it a name. It's a simple thing you can do. I did it here, and I call it the hub, and I'm marketing content hubs. And those are the kind of fun things that you can do as a marketer or a business owner, is make this more relevant through following the publisher's MO. When you have your big idea, you want to then come up with an editorial strategy. How am I going to support that? And it starts with a calendar. And that calendar is a definition of the types of content, whether it be a blog, an ebook, a white paper, could be a little piece of software that you distribute, like an ROI calculator or a color selector. Content is not just writing or video. It's up to your imagination. And then once you have your editorial strategy, you want to come up with a publishing, promotion, and distribution plan. And the thing that many people don't realize is this idea of getting credibility with Google, in large part, is built on how much traffic you get for specific keywords. And so having put your content on your website as the hub, you want to use LinkedIn and Facebook as ways to draw you back. And what I'm seeing a lot of companies and a lot of advisory work I do is help people get more of their content on their site, and don't put it out there by publishing it on LinkedIn, because then LinkedIn gets all of the traffic and all of the credibility from Google, not you. So think of everything you're doing as trying to draw people back to you as you publish it on your website, promote it on LinkedIn or Facebook, and distribute it through Twitter or making appearances like this. There's lots and lots of ways you can get your content out there. And I have an article that I'm sharing with you in the chat screen about this. And so the next thing you want to do is become part of the community. So whether you're packaging professionals or your homeland security professionals, or the local market for co-working, is integrating that content into what you do for community events. So you might use print on demand, and when you go to an event, print out 4 or 5 copies that you distribute of something that you're proud of and that you want to share. And if you haven't done it, I highly recommend is write something that's thoughtful, something that you think can make an impact to the people you're trying to have as your customers, and hand it out physically to people and get people to react, because I can almost assure you that the feedback you get will definitely help you do better in the future, but it also may lead to customer conversations or something that they can pass on to somebody else who is a potential customer because they get what you do. So all of that, those 2 ways, publishing and community, are ways to get your content out there. The advent of marketing automation, and really the first one that I started following around 2010, 2009, I guess, was HubSpot. And the idea is that everything that you distribute has a link in it that's encoded. And your marketing automation does 2 things. It allows you to do something at scale. So you don't want to send out an individually addressed email to everybody. You don't want to do your social media throughout the day, all day, 7 days a week, but you can schedule emails and you can schedule social media. And when somebody makes an inquiry to your business, you can have a sequence of 7 emails that go out with multiple offers. And marketing automation helps you do that very effectively. The other thing it does is, because everything is encoded with a link, it basically gives you the reporting to show you what's working and what's not. So you want to do more, obviously, more of what works and less of what doesn't. And the reports within your marketing automation really become a helpful tool for you and your team. Speaking of teams, you also want to, if you have a business that has salespeople, or if it's just for yourself, you want to try and involve your content as much as possible. We used to, when I first started, we'd take a magazine article, photocopy 50 of them, put them in an envelope with a little sticky and say, hey, I thought you'd be interested in this. Well, now we can do it physically ourselves, but training your salespeople or the frontline people, if you're retail, to reference what you have up online and get your physical customers using it. It's really important to have your people who are selling for you involved in your content and using it as examples or case studies, or thought leadership pieces or style pieces, whatever business you're in, that helps you build your brand. And they're going to be your best, one of your best ways to distribute if you put some attention on that. And then also teaching them how to handle inbound leads, because if somebody's been reading your content and your salespeople say, hey, what's your budget? What do you want to buy? When somebody's just read your thought leadership piece and said, hey, it's really interesting, I had a question about that, they need to be trained to be a little bit different kind of a salesperson these days, be much more of a consultant and less of an order taker. And that consultative sales process really fits into content marketing well. And then lastly, the ROI model, which I'll show you here in a second. Oh, right here. This is available for free on my website. It's the Untapped and the Chief Packaging Officer programs that I showed you at the beginning both got their funding approved by doing this. And amongst all of these numbers, what you have on the left column are the things that you're going to do for your content marketing. And those things have an expense, and it's a monthly expense. So you want to build a budget for your content marketing. And then secondarily, as you plan out a year's worth of your budget for the content marketing, you also want to have a funnel that says how many, how much traffic did I get? 10,000 traffic, what percent becomes marketing qualified leads? And then which of those are sales qualified leads? And then how many sales qualified leads do we typically on average close? And so what I'm able to do then is compare the amount of money I spend on marketing versus the amount of income I get. And you can do some pro forma planning. And if you know, as most executives know their numbers in a larger company, or if you're a smaller business, you know what you're selling. And if you can say in your analysis that I'm going to get 30 sales at $30,000 from this effort, then I can decide on how much money I want to spend. And a rule of thumb that I've used since my whole career, I learned it in school, is you want to have an E to R of 0.33, expense to revenue. And so when you do that, that 0.33 represents your ability to have revenue and make a profit. So
Keith, sorry, we're running over a bit, and
yep.
I just want to allow for questions for people. So it's 12:40.
Sure, I'm wrapping up right now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
On my website, I have this article called 9 Action Items to Pivot Your Content Strategy. And there are things that you can do, from brainstorming sessions to other things. The link is here in the chat screen, and would love to have you explore and see if there's anything here that rings true to you. And I'd be glad to offer some time on a free consultation to support your efforts in content marketing. There's also a couple links to one from HubSpot, 26 ideas for small business marketing strategy, and an item that you also have a link to, which is help for small businesses navigating COVID-19 from MailChimp. And the last thing I'll say is, if you don't know what you want to do, it's harder to do it. And so I encourage you to think through the materials. Please download the free items, the book, but it's all around helping you get a plan in place and a set of goals. And that's what I really love to do, is help people achieve their goals. So thanks for having me. I really appreciate your time, and I hope the content helps you in your journey. Thanks.
Thank you, Keith. That was really, really wonderful, and just like a lot of great tidbits, especially at the end, even that is that in the chat too?
Yes.
All the links to those blog posts. Yep. Okay, so we can open it up for questions for a little bit, or just chat. So.
Yeah, Keith, this is Sue. So how to get people, let's say you don't really have a content strategy right now. How would you say people should get started? What is the first thing that people should look at?
I'd be looking at what it is that your customers are trying to accomplish. I've tried to use the examples of HAYVN here within Fairfield County. Depending on how virtual you have to go, Felicia, having some small business guides, right? We do these weekly sessions. There's so much good content going on within HAYVN. Maybe there's a way to turn that into some handouts or downloads off of the website for HAYVN to build the virtual presence as well. And so, I always look to customers for what it is that they want to consume, because they tell you. If you know your customers and you're selling within a niche, there's a lot of good information that you can create content from. So an example is, I have a client that has created a way to drag and drop an Adobe PDF file from a bank statement, broker statement, or tax form, and it pulls it all out and puts it into spreadsheets for you. So imagine a company that gets dozens of statements a month and has no way to really gain that information. There was a lot of questions that we got as we took it out on sales calls around how do I build that into my data warehouse, and what are the functions that it would help me to do. And so this company's first blog post was an article about how artificial intelligence and robotics is helping to deal with the onslaught of paperwork that companies deal with. And it became a really interesting article. I heard that one of the salespeople sent it out with a Ray Dalio piece, and the response was, "Your blog is as good as what Ray Dalio wrote." So, customers will react well if you listen to them and the themes that they have. That you can actually turn it into content that you can send out.
Great.